Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the news from the world economy. Coming up, Syrian refugees face harsh winter as UN lacks funding. And Back to the Future becomes reality with the new Hoverboard. First, the headlines. A Belgian judge charged HSBC Holdings with tax fraud and money laundering that cost Belgium hundreds of millions of euros in lost tax receipts. Prosecutors said the charges related to business carried out by a Swiss unit of HSBC for wealth management clients. The British-based bank allegedly offered diamond dealers and other wealthy clients ways of hiding cash and evading taxes. Homes of some 20 clients of the Swiss private banking arm of HSBC were searched in October 2013 in connection with the investigation. ECB President Mario Draghi said the European Central Bank would take more measures if current efforts proved insufficient to accelerate the Eurozone recovery. The ECB is pumping more money into the banking system to unblock lending by offering banks new long-term loans and by buying private debt. Though the credit easing package has gained traction, Eurozone annual inflation remains below 1%. And while the ECB may purchase sovereign bonds if inflation remains low, printing money to buy sovereign debt, also known as quantitative easing, remains a taboo topic for Germany.
That our credit easing package is delivering tangible benefits. Now, the forward curve consistently lies below zero over a two-year horizon.
As the EU moves to target Ukraine separatists, it remains split over the role of sanctions against Russia. European Union governments moved to put more Ukrainian separatists under asset freezes and travel bans on Monday, but took no action to step up economic sanctions. UK Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said the first step should be to seek a political solution. The EU's 28 member states are deeply divided about imposing more economic sanctions on Russia, fearing Russian retaliation, whereas the Baltic states, Poland, and Sweden have consistently pushed for tougher sanctions. Austria, Greece, and Cyprus are reluctant. Following Japan's slump into its fourth recession since 2008, Tokyo has become increasingly likely to implement a stimulus package. The Abe administration may implement a $26 billion program to help households and is also likely to postpone an October sales tax increase until 2017. According to some estimates, postponing the tax increase could add about half a percentage point to real or price-adjusted economic growth. But for now, the future of Abenomics hinges on Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's re-election in a probable snap vote to be held next month. Hong Kong's economy will be affected in the coming months by pro-democracy demonstrations, a spokesman for China's Ministry of Commerce said on Tuesday. Though the protests, which drew well over 100,000 at their peak, have dwindled to just a few hundred, the Chinese official nonetheless foresees a negative impact. Hong Kong authorities on Tuesday began clearing part of a key area of the city almost 2 months after the protests began. The protesters are demanding open nominations in the next election for chief executive in 2017, but Beijing only allows pre-screened candidates.
Although the negative impact on the Hong Kong economy caused by the so-called Occupy Central activities has not been seen in the short term, it will emerge in the coming period. The government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and the masses in Hong Kong are against this protest resolutely.
As winter slowly creeps in, millions of refugees from Syria and Iraq face worsening conditions as the UN lacks the financial resources to provide for them. I-24 News reporter Daniel Roth has the details.
There are more than 13 million people displaced by conflicts in Syria and Iraq. And now, as winter approaches, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees has had to announce a reduction of its aid because of a lack of financial resources. They have a deficit of more than $58 million.
We are very concerned by an over $58 million funding shortfall that could leave as many as 1 million people without proper help. This is partly due to this sharp increase of internal displacement that we have witnessed in Iraq.
The agency has already spent $154 million to help refugees from these countries in winter aid programs, which aim to give out blankets, oil, and warm clothing, a vital need since in some areas the temperature drops below -15 Celsius. Often crammed into makeshift camps, the living conditions of these refugees and displaced peoples are considered disastrous. This year, the UNHCR will help 620,000 people in Syria and 240,000 people in Iraq. No small number, but representing less than half of the refugees in these countries.
This is one of the most mobile population of IDPs that I've ever seen in my last 30 years in this business. They're highly mobile. They're looking for school. They're looking for, are they close to services, be it hospitals? Are they getting a comfortable accommodation? Are their families adjusted? Are they trying to unite with families? Are they looking for relatives?
And the situation doesn't seem like it's going to improve anytime soon. While funds are decreasing, the number of people in need is constantly increasing. According to UN estimates, between 300 and 500 additional refugees arrive each day in the north of Iraq from the city of Kobani.
And we stay on the topic of Syrian and Iraqi refugees with I-24 News correspondent Ayman Siksak joining us for a closer look at the economic situation in Syria. Ayman, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
So 3 years of civil war in Syria. Do we have any idea which sectors have been most affected by this war?
Well, the economy in Syria was extremely diverse before the conflict. So the most prominent sectors were agriculture, industry, and retail, all of which took on their own 20% of the Syrian economy. That's over 60%, just these three sectors alone, joined by tourism, which was around 15% of the economy. Now, all four of these sectors have been hit very, very hard by the continued conflict in Syria and with the invasion of the IS. We're seeing extreme drops in income, in GDP. These are the sectors that the Syrian economy relied on most of all, so it's a big blow to the Syrian economy.
Are there official numbers at this point of the actual cost of the war and how long it would take to reconstruct?
Well, they're saying right now, estimates in Syria are that the reconstruction of the economy and its rehabilitation will take anywhere between $50 to $200 billion.
Wow.
Now, because this is a lot of money, they're saying it will take maybe over 2 decades, 25 years, to really rehabilitate the Syrian economy, not just to bring it back to where it was, but just to try to somehow push it forward and see an upward trend. So, unfortunately, we're looking at a very long period where we'll only see this worsening situation continue to go downward.
And how does this translate to the GDP or its ability to produce wealth?
Well, in Syria, we've seen since 2011 an over 30% drop in GDP. In Syria, there's still this conduct where people who own businesses go into their families' businesses, their father's businesses, especially in retail and in industry. This is true. Now, because these privately owned businesses are disappearing right now, the younger generation in Syria really is at a loss. We're seeing that there's no places to go to work, basically, and that's why unemployment in Syria is soaring.
On that very topic, in terms of the younger generation and unemployment, I mean, what exactly is the impact that it has had on the younger generation socially? Can you give us an example?
Well, what we're seeing now is that if the conflict continues, which unfortunately it's expected, it's expected to continue. They're saying that 60% of Syrians will be unemployed within a year. So right now we're talking over half of the Syrian population.
Syrians in general, not just the young people, right?
Absolutely. Syrians in general are already unemployed, but most of that are young people because they were expected to go into family businesses, which are right now going out of business fast.
Now, based on what you were saying before also in terms of the family-based economy, it's essentially a cash economy, isn't it?
Absolutely. In Syria, only about 3 to 5% of people use credit cards, which is a very, very low number. What happens in Syria is if you want to buy a home or a car or make a big purchase like that, you would go to a central or national bank, make a request for a loan, and make the transaction in cash. Now, this unfortunately helped the IS a lot because once they took control of Syria, the banks had large amounts of cash to support this economy, which the militants then took over. And now we're seeing banks running out of money. So there's none to give back to the younger generations hoping to build a better economy and future for themselves.
Okay, well, Ayman Siksak, thank you very much for joining us in Financial Bazaar.
Thank you, Binyamin.
Now for something a little less realistic. Ever since Marty McFly wrote on wanting Back to the Future Part 2, fans have dreamed of having their own levitating skateboard or hoverboard. That wish has now become true as engineers in Northern California have made the futuristic device a reality. Here's more.
And we have liftoff. Defying gravity, the Hendo hoverboard floats about an inch above the ground, powered by 4 disc-shaped engines. It can move speedily, if noisily, in multiple directions and turn around. The battery only lasts 7 minutes, but that's still enough time to take a grown adult for an exhilarating ride. The partly 3D printed board levitates on top of conductive materials such as aluminium or this copper half-pipe. The technology that propels it is called magnetic field architecture, developed by the startup company ArcsPax.
We are creating a magnetic field, and then through a method of induction that's part of our secret sauce, we're creating a secondary and equal magnetic field in this conductive surface.
Henderson, an architect, founded ArcsPax with his wife Jill. For decades, they've been trying to design more earthquake-resistant buildings, and the hoverboard is a proof of concept.
Imagine that there's an earthquake, and the early warning system turns on the hover systems, and the supports fall away as the building starts to hover. The shaking stops, the supports return, and no one in that room or that building ever knew there was an earthquake.
The couple has turned to crowdfunding website Kickstarter to get financial support for their project. They long ago passed the target of $250,000, and the first 10 hoverboards, costing $10,000 apiece, have pre-sold out. But for far less money, amateur inventors can get their hands on a developer kit and theoretically use the technology to make anything hover.
We want to seed this hover ecosystem by putting the technology into the hands of all those tinkerers, all those
curious minds.
Curious minds.
The power of many minds that Greg likes to say.
By putting this technology in their hands, we'll be able to solve problems we don't even know exist.
Right now, the elevation may be modest, but the Hendo hoverboard is setting its sights high. Its creators envision future applications in manufacturing, transportation, and even space exploration.
And we stay on the topic of Back to the Future as Daniel Rudd joins us in Media Watch. So, Back to the Future, eh?
Back to the Future. Great Scott.
Indeed.
This is a Back to the Future inside joke. Great
Yes.
Scott. Sorry about that. Actually, Back to the Future is a very, very big deal. You see from this piece, they're actually inventing hoverboards. It not only has a kind of cultural impact, but it's impacting reality. There's, like in the tradition of great science fiction, it's actually impacting the kind of technology we have out in the world. So it's no small deal. This was actually, you don't think about this so often, but this was a huge box office hit, Back to the Future. This trilogy was $1 billion trilogy, nearly $1 billion trilogy.
I can't believe that, really.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. You think of Back to the Future kind of as this kind of cute 1980s, early 90s trilogy that was a nice comedy, an action adventure a little bit,
Right.
but not a big deal. But this was $1 billion box office success. And not only in the box office, they have a musical, they have rides at Universal Pictures, they have lunch boxes. It was a huge deal.
Right.
The other side of it, the other thing that maybe Back to the Future was a pioneer in was in branding, was in brand placement, product placement. So if you go back and watch the movies, you may not think about it, but they have small cases of Nike, which, when you think about it, actually, there's Nike all over the place. You have small, Pepsi. The Pepsi is all over these films. Pizza Hut. But actually, the biggest one, people even to this day don't realize it, but Delorean was actually a real car. It's funny because people growing up nowadays look and they think the DeLorean is this product from Back to the Future. But this was actually a real car. It was a guy named John DeLorean had been working for GM and left to strike out on his own and designed this car that was going to be a high-powered, high-horsepower alternative to the fancy cars. It was going to go for something like $8,000. It ended up costing closer to $30,000, which was enormous money at the time. But this was an actual car. John DeLorean died in 2005. The company actually went under long before that. But nowadays, there's something called the DeLorean Motor Company making new DeLoreans, and you can get them for, I think, up to $60,000, somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000. You can get these cars that harken back to the good old days of Back to the Future.
I guess they won't be working on the same kind of hover sort of technology, though, huh?
Soon. The wheels will go in, and then they'll be saying, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Okay, nice. Okay, well, we're going. We don't need roads either. Thank you very much, Daniel and Roth, for joining us. That's the end of The Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at i21 News. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares. Thanks for joining us, and see you again tomorrow.